Hello and welcome to this instructional video on CATIA prismatic machining. We are working here on the second setup of our example part, and we're getting pretty close to finishing all the milling operations. In this video we're going to machine this region here where there are two pockets. There's one pocket where the bottom of the pocket is this surface, and then another pocket which is really a true pocket that goes all the way through the part. Both of these pockets would be closed pockets since they are contained. There's no opening to approach the pocket from the side. So I'm going to let you take a crack at this first. So again, two pockets, and then when you've had a chance to do this, you can come back to the video and we can step through and see how you did. Okay, so before we go back to CATIA, just to look at these two images here, this shows you the two pockets that I ask you to try programming. Of course, there are other ways you could approach this. In this case here, we do this entire top pocket first, and then we leave a little bit of material here and drop through in the second pocket. However, one could alternately do this entire region here first and drop all the way through, and then you pocket out this region here. So there is a question of always when you decide to, when you're planning, what options, what strategy do you go with? What sequence do you go with? And in some cases, one may have a strategy that's more efficient than others. In some cases, you may be doing a strategy because it gives you the best surface finishes on the important surfaces and so on. So just to point that out before we go back to CATIA, that there is a different approach or another approach for removing this entire material. So let's look at CATIA, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a pocketing operation. So as before, you can go ahead and copy if you want to. If you're pretty much using the same parameters that you've used in the past, you can go ahead and copy. Since these are closed pockets and I'm going to use contour or helical machining, I'm going to copy one of the earlier pockets, and I'm going to just paste it after the last profiling operation. And then let's go ahead and jump into this pocketing operation, and of course the first thing we're going to have to do is go to the second tab and redefine our geometry. So we're pretty much going to have to remove everything here. So I'm going to remove the top, remove the contours, remove the bottom. And let's go ahead and start by selecting the top. So this surface here is going to be the top of our pocket. So again, we're machining this area over here. And then the bottom is going to be this surface here. So again, we have this issue of CATIA picking this loop here as our guide, which of course is not correct. We want to select a much larger guide curve to define the extent of the pocket. So we need to remove this so we can manually select this. So let's go ahead and again click on the wall and use the edge selection method. And what we're going to do is we're going to, let's say, start over here. Let's click on the arrow to flip the direction. Yes, let's do it one more time. Let's flip the direction. And then we're going to use the navigate on edges until an edge. So we're going to try and navigate because there are quite a few edges here, and to pick all of those would be a little bit tedious. So let's use the navigate on edges until an edge. Let's go all the way over here to see if CATIA picks those. Now I got almost all the way there. It stopped there. So let's do it one more time. Let's see if we can get them all picked. Okay, so we've now picked all of these edges here. However, we have this gap here. So let's see if there's anything that helps us on the edge selection toolbar. If we go over, we have an option here to close contour with line. So what this would do is it would connect where we are now to where we started using a line, and that would actually close off the boundary of the pocket really nicely. So let's click this tool here, and now we have a complete profile that goes all the way around. So in the past I showed you how to use a sketch, so certainly we could have done that. We could have created a sketch where this was included as part of the sketch. But again, there are some tools here that can assist you at times to close profiles and so on. Okay, so let's hit OK. So we now have our geometry set up. if we move across, we have our tool, which we're going to continue using our 0.5 tool. Of course, it's always a good idea to check the radii to make sure, but in this case, I'm pretty confident that the radii here is at least equal to 0.5, probably greater than 0.5. Not the radii, sorry, the diameter. Let's look at the speeds and feeds. Again, we're going to go with what we've been using all along. 120 inches per minute, 20 for finishing at 6,000 RPM for a carbide tool. And then our approaches, we're going to have to, again, use helical approaches because we're coming in on a closed pocket from above. And again, because I copied the pocket from over here, those are set, as is the retract. We don't have anything for finish pass retract, which we probably should have. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just go ahead. Right now it's set to none. Let's set the bill by user. And I'm going to go ahead, and for now I'm going to just do a plain retract. And I'm going to retract it. Let's just retract it to the top of the island. We can always go back and modify that if it doesn't look correct. So again, we have finish pass approach, finish pass retract, return between the levels approach, return between levels at retract, and then we have our initial approach, which is a helical, and our final retract. And then finally, let's go to our first tab. We have outward helical, so we're starting on the inside and working our way outwards. It's our toolpath strategy. We're going to overlap the tool 10%. That's our radial step over. For axial, we're going to go with maximum depth of cut again at 50 thousandths, so we need 15 passes to get down. And then for finishing, we're going to side finish last level, and then we're also going to finish on the bottom. So let's do side finish at last level and bottom, and then 10 thousandths we're leaving as our finishing allowance. Now this is where the sequencing of our operations may be an issue, because notice that we're finishing on the bottom. However, we're finishing out here in this region, which is eventually going to be removed by the next pocket. So we're sort of wasting time out here, and that might be something that one would want to consider in terms of the order of the operations. Maybe if we did this operation first, we could be a little bit more economical and reduce some time because we're not wasting time finishing material that's going to be removed. Something to think about. Okay, let's generate our toolpaths and see what they look like. Here we go. Oh, looks like we missed something. Missed the island. We can see here that the toolpaths are removing the island. So let's go back and add that under our geometry tab. So let's click on this, and let's just go ahead and select our edges. Very important. We don't want to remove that. Also, while we're here, it's good to check, and you can see here that there is an issue here that we need to take into account. If we don't set this back to 0, there will be a finishing pass, but it will still leave 10 thousandths material. So let's double click on this and set this to 0. Notice that everything else is 0 here, so that's good. Okay, let's generate our toolpaths. And we can see now that the toolpaths are taking into account the island. So let's look at what we've got. Again, a good way to do this is going to the plane by plane replay mode. Let's just back up to the beginning, and then let's step through and see what's going on by each plane. So here we see the green is the toolpath for roughing. If we look closely, we can see that there's a helical lead-in in this region here where the tool comes into cut. And then we can see this is the retract move where the tool lifts up, rapids over, and rapids down to the start of the helix for the next level. So this is our motion to return between levels. And then if we keep stepping through, we can see that this continues. So one thing that could be a little bit of a concern, I often don't like retracting because the tool is right against this island as it retracts. One could possibly have a circular lead out so that the tool moves away a bit from the island before it lifts. So one could certainly play around with that to make it a little less, this issue here. But again, we are leaving some finishing material here. So even if the tool knocks or rattles when it lifts up, it should still be fine in terms of the finish of the island. Let's see what happens with the finishing passes. So I'm going to go all the way to the end, and then I'm going to back up. So here is the finishing pass around the island. So that full depth, so it's removing material. Remember, we left material on the previous pocket, so it's removing all of that. And then we have a retract, and we have a helical lead in here, it looks like, to get onto that. So again, this is a little bit, the fact that you're rapiding down would make you nervous if you're an operator, because the tool is really close to this island, so that could be something to fix. What we could do is, instead of, for the beginning of the helix, we could have maybe a plane, add a plane, and then have it start to approach from the top of the island. Here's the outer profile. Looks like a retract and approach here. Some more finishing passes. And then there's some more here. So here's an issue right here. One can see that after it finishes this region here, and again, this is going to be removed, so this is not that critical. But notice what the tool does. It lifts up and it rapids over. So one has to pay attention to where this rapid move is, and then it rapids down. So again, things that are a little bit disconcerting because you're rapiding around structures. So just to bear in mind that you want to make sure that this is high enough so that you get over the top of the island. Otherwise, you could have a collision there. So the fact that the, let's back up a bit, that the finishing tool passes are disconnected tells me that if I want to try to start avoiding these rapid moves, I have to start thinking about maybe the link, the return in a level, because what we're doing is we are jumping between the same level, tool paths at the same level, so we may need to set the approaches and retracts for that. However, another thing that you can do, if you have things that are disconnected, the reason why it's disconnected is because this island is in the way. So the toolpath generation is breaking the toolpaths up because of that. One thing you could do, and again, this could make things more inefficient time-wise, is you can go back to your strategy tab, and under radial, instead of having a 10% overlap, maybe we make this a little bit larger. Maybe we try 25%. And let's see if that allows the tool to, more tool paths between the island and the wall, and maybe prevents that breaking up of the finishing tool paths. Of course, you may end up having to cut longer because of this. So I'm not sure, I'm still seeing some rapid moves. And again, we could rewind and, go to the end and then backtrack again. So again, we still have that move where the tool is repositioning during a between those two disconnected parts of the finishing pass. And the roughing looks the same, of course. So let's go ahead and simulate this with material removal. I'm going to switch this to back from plane by plane to continuous replay. And let's go ahead and do a full video on this. Let's go ahead, slide the bar over so we speed through, and let's see what's going on here. So again, when you have islands, they tend to complicate the way the toolpaths are generated and can often lead to problems in terms of collisions that one has to kind of pay attention to. Okay, so if we look at this visually, we can see that there's obviously something going on here where the tool ran right through the corner of the part. And this, I would surmise, is the repositioning of the tool from the last operation, which was machining the step shoulder all the way over to the stop. So we may have to go back and change the initial approach to this pocket to make sure that the tool is high enough so that it avoids this running through the part here. There's also this here, and sometimes these can be just artifacts just because of the inaccuracy of the material removal display. Let's go and look at the Analyze tool here, and let's switch to Gouge, and let's see what this shows us, because this will tell us, you know, whether or not there's something within the tolerance, which is set to 1000. So we can definitely see here in the corner that there is gouging taking place because the tool flies through the corner. And it's not clear that this is, because it's not showing up, or if it is, it's within the tolerance. My thinking is this is because the tool is actually just rubbing on the top of the surface here, and because of the inaccuracies in the display of the machining operation of the material removal, it's leaving this little artifact there. However, that's still not a good thing. It would be nice to have that tool a little bit above the top of the island as it repositions to avoid making contact with it. But we can definitely see here that we have to fix this issue here. Okay, so let's see how we deal with those. So one thing that one can do, if you go to the fourth tab here, there's something called clearance. And this is kind of very useful if you have a situation where you have lots of islands and the tool is down and the tool is lifting up to reposition a lot, because the tool paths are not all connected together, again broken up by the islands. One can include a clearance move, which means every time that the tool repositions, lifts, you can force the tool up to a plane or a distance which avoids all the obstructions, all the islands that are present. Now to do this, there are a number of ways you can do this. You can use, if you click on these options here, you can use the safety plane, and this safety plane refers to the plane that was defined initially in your setup. So if you go back into setup, there is a plane definition there, and normally you set that to be the plane, a plane that's above every single obstruction, so that's kind of a global clearance. But you can also set it to a specific plane. So again, you have the option here to pick a plane. So for example, if we pick this, we could pick the top of the island and select that as our clearance plane. Now the problem with this, for some reason, if you right click on this, it doesn't allow you to do an offset, which is a little bit frustrating, because it would be nice to have that option too, because I actually want to have the clearance to be a little bit above this plane. So in which case, what one would have to do is go back into the part design workbench and add a plane that is offset a certain distance above the top here. To save some time, instead of doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and select this top surface here. This top surface here is, of course, clearly higher than this surface. Not so efficient because the tool has to move up further, because that's my clearance plane now versus this. But just to demonstrate how the clearance option works, let's go ahead and select this. So let's go ahead and now generate our tool paths to see what the clearance move does. Actually, I missed something. Hit OK. We have to activate it. So you have to right click, activate. Let's go ahead and generate our. So now if you look at the rapid moves, you can see that the rapid moves are all, as the tool is repositioning, are all happening at that plane I selected, which is above the island. So let's backtrack. So let's switch to plane by plane. Let's backtrack. So here's our finishing pass around the island. Here's our positioning move from the finishing on the profile. This is our profile. Let's go forward. So the tool retracts, and now because I have the clearance set, the tool rapids upwards from the end of the retract all the way up to the plane I selected for the clearance, then rapids over to the point that's immediately above the start of the approach, and then it rapids down to the start of the approach. So it's doing rapid motions X and Y at that plane that I selected as the clearance plane. So now I have this. So let's backtrack a little bit more again and see what's happening here. So this is the repositioning move again. So the end of retract, rapid up, rapid down. Here's the finishing pass. And then this is, again, I'm working backwards. So it does this first. Then the tool retracts. Now instead of moving from here over, it jumps up to the clearance plane, does this rapid move, and then comes back down. So again, I have added this extra distance in height to make sure I clear the island. And again, rather than using this top surface here, if I pick a plane and just offset it slightly or create a plane in the part design workbench, I can still keep the tool closer to the island, but make sure that I'm avoiding it. Okay, so that's one thing that might fix that artifact there, because the tool was probably just running right on the top of the surface. The other issue I need to fix is the initial approach, because the initial approach, it looked like the tool was running through the corner as it moved from the end of the profile here to the start of the pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a approach to a plane, an axial motion to a plane, to the helical approach, and then I'm going to select this plane here. So that's going to keep the tool hopefully above as it repositions from this operation here, the profile, to the start of the pocket. Oh, and it's always a good idea to do a little bit of an offset too. So I can offset this plane here. Let's offset at 50 thousandths. So we're a little bit above this as the tool repositions. So let's generate our tool paths again. And now if we look at that red dashed line, which is the repositioning move, we can see, whereas before it was going on a diagonal from the end of the retract at the end of the profile down to the beginning of the pocket, which is what caused the tool to run through the corner here, it's now running at that at the plane that I selected for the initial approach. So again, to be sure, let's just do simulate our material removal. Let's just run through. And hopefully this, yeah, so we no longer have that collision here, and nor do we have that artifact, again, because the tool is lifted up. So again, these are two things that one can do. These are some examples of things one can do, one needs to do to make sure that the tool paths one generates are collision free, because again, the tool paths, CATIA isn't smart enough always to be able to work its way around complex islands and complex pockets. Again, the Analyze tool, always use this to check your remaining material. Let's see if we got everything and we didn't miss anything. So again, green means that we're at the design surface. So again, we see in this pocket here, the top pocket, all the surfaces are green, so we have cleaned up what we were intending to clean up. Again, the purple on the top of the island is because we left material there. We would still have to go back and remove 10 thousandths here as well as 10 thousandths there. Okay, so that's the top pocket. And for the bottom pocket, the second pocket here that goes all the way through, we're going to just copy and paste the pocket that we just did. And then we're going to go into the pocket. And let's go to our geometry tab. So we're going to change, we've got to change this geometry here. I'm going to just remove everything. So remove all the contours, remove the bottom, remove, right click, remove island. And then we're going to go ahead and reselect. Actually, before we do this, what we want to do is we want to toggle the bottom from hard to a soft bottom. So if we click on this text here, now that we've removed everything, notice that the bottom drops away. So now we have a soft bottom basically. So let's pick the top. So the top of this pocket is going to be this surface here. And then the actual bottom is going to be the surface where it breaks through, which is on the bottom here. Let's go up here. So notice that in selecting that bottom surface, CATIA selected all these holes as islands, because it's thinking that the entire bottom surface is what you're working with. In this case, we're just using it to define the bottom of the open pocket. So to remove the islands, we just right-click on any one of the island tags, and then just remove all islands from the menu that pops up. So again, we're just looking at we just want the bottom. We don't really want those those islands. We also don't want the guide curve that came with that bottom surface pick. So let's remove that too. Okay, let's go ahead now and select our guides. So let's use the belt of faces option. We've used this in the past. Right click by belt of faces, and I'm going to go ahead and pick this face here, and then this adjoining face, and then I'm going to use the navigate on faces onto the face option, and I'm going to pick the edge, the face immediately preceding the first pick. And it looked like it went around and picked the faces, those 8 or so faces that make up the boundary of the pocket. So let's hit OK. So we have our geometry defined. Other than that, we're pretty much going to use the same coarse tool, same speeds and feeds. Let's work with the same approaches, and then the same step over strategy. So radial, axial, and finishing. In this case, finishing on the bottom isn't going to be an issue. Actually, let's just change this so that we're only going to side finish because we don't have a bottom. So side finish, last level. Let's go ahead and generate. So we can see, again, we're also still using the island here as our clearance because the toolpath's jumping up here. So we can deselect that since there's no obstruction in this region here. Also to notice that the toolpath goes flush to the bottom of the part. We might want to have the tool stick out a little bit so that it actually does a nice clean edge on the bottom of the true pocket. So let's look at how we do that. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our last tab, and we're going to deactivate our clearance. So the tool no longer lifts up because, again, there's no island in this region. And then we're going to go ahead back to our geometry tab, and then offset on bottom. Let's offset the tool slightly. Let's go 50 thousandths, but this time in a negative direction because we want the bottom to be below so that the tool goes a little bit deeper than the bottom of the pocket. And let's go ahead and regenerate our tool paths. So now we see that the tool stays a lot closer. So it stays down, it doesn't do those very large lifting moves. And also too, if you look edge on, if I use a front view, you can see that the tool paths actually extend below the bottom surface, which is what you want if you're going to create a nice clean edge on the bottom. Okay, let's go ahead and generate the tool paths. So not generate the tool paths, that's simulate material removal. And just to confirm that we're not missing anything as we did in the previous pocket when we had that collision as the tool repositioned. There we go. So we have that true pocket created. Let's use our Analyze tool again just to confirm that we didn't miss anything. Let's apply. So everything should look pretty much green except those areas that we deliberately left material top of the islands that we have to go back at some point in time and finish off. And we can see that pretty much it's green in both the top pocket and bottom pocket. Okay, so again, this video, to summarize, completed the machining of these pockets. These pockets were a little bit more involved because, again, we were dealing with partial geometry that we had to complete. And also, too, because of the open pocket, there were some issues, too, because of the island that forced the tool to have to lift and move around the island that we addressed using our clearance move with the macros. So with that, we're pretty much finished most of the milling. Again, there's a couple of things to clean up the top of the islands, and also we want to mill out the circular pocket. But pretty much we're going to be moving on to how to do holes next.